The dinner had been prepared in the underground kitchen of the Valente estate, and no one had been allowed to leave. The room had no windows. 2 guards at the door. Chef Laurent at the serving station, watching every hand that came near the plates. On the table, saffron soup, pan-seared fish, white lemon sauce, a decanted red, and the set of silver knives that had belonged to the Valente family for 3 generations. Nico Valente sat at the head of the table and had not yet touched a thing. He was looking at Tessa Rowe. Tessa was the newest member of the household staff. She was also, she understood now, standing in a particular kind of light, the kind that landed on people when someone with power needed something disposable to stand between themselves and danger. Her uniform pulled at the shoulders. It had not been made for her. The estate had not been made for her either. One of the guards had noticed both of these facts and found them worth a quiet remark. Chef Laurent had not looked at her since she arrived, which was its own kind of assessment. "Taste it," Nico said. She understood exactly what he meant. Not for flavor, for mortality. She tasted the soup. Clean. She tasted the fish. Clean. She tasted the sauce, a lemon reduction, slightly acidic on the back of the tongue, but correct for the dish. She tasted the wine. Clean. Nico picked up one of the silver knives and cut a portion of the fish. He raised it toward his mouth. Tessa said, "Don't eat that." The room went entirely still. Chef Laurent turned from the serving station. One of the guards put a hand on the doorframe. Victor Marlowe, seated to Nico's right, with a leather document case beside his chair, looked up for the first time in several minutes. Nico did not move. He looked at Tessa. "She just tasted it," Laurent said. The word she carried a specific weight. Tessa looked at the knife in Nico's hand. "The poison is not in the food." A sound from one of the guards, not quite a laugh, but something adjacent to it. "Then where is it?" he said. Tessa said, "On what only he is allowed to touch." Nico looked down at the silver knife, 3 generations of Valente family history. The thing no servant was permitted to handle. For the first time that evening, the most protected object on the table became the most frightening one. Hours earlier, Tessa had been brought to the underground kitchen for the first time. She had expected a kitchen. She had found something closer to a fortified installation. Steel doors, cameras at 3 angles, a private wine cellar accessible only by coded lift, a refrigerated storage room with a magnetic lock, a laminated checklist of every ingredient that entered the premises, signed by Laurent on arrival. A service lift to the dining room, operated by a 6-digit code that changed twice a week, and at the center of the room, in a locked cabinet with 2 separate keys required to open it, the Valente silver. Chef Laurent ran the kitchen with the particular authority of someone who had been doing so for 15 years and had learned to treat any question about his methods as a personal challenge. He did not explain things to Tessa. He assigned her the lowest tasks and expected her to infer the rest. She inferred a great deal. She had spent 3 years as a hospital kitchen aide, which meant she had learned to read rooms through what they smelled like. The work had not been glamorous. She had managed dietary restrictions for cardiac patients, prepared texture-modified meals for patients with swallowing difficulties, and learned to identify by smell alone when a cleaning compound had been diluted incorrectly, or when a surface had been wiped but not actually sanitized. She had also learned the particular attention required when only one patient among many was getting worse. In a ward of 40 people eating the same food, if one person deteriorated and 39 did not, the food was not the variable. You looked for the variable that applied only to that one person. She had learned to do this so automatically that it had become a kind of reflex, a way of walking into any room with something edible in it and immediately asking, "What here is different for someone specific?" She had been doing it since she arrived at the Valente estate. This kitchen smelled mostly correct. Mostly. Near the washing station for the silver, there was something underneath the polishing solution. Faint, almost undetectable. The kind of smell that registered as wrong before it registered as anything specific, a metallic undertone with a slight chemical quality, like a film that had been covered rather than removed. She had smelled something similar once in the hospital, a sterilization compound applied too thickly to a stainless surface, leaving a residue that patients occasionally complained tasted strange when it transferred to their utensils. That had been an accident. This smelled more deliberate. She was not certain of that yet, but she filed it the way she filed things in working kitchens, without announcement, without accusation, as a fact waiting for other facts to arrive beside it. She mentioned it to Mrs. Sarah, the house manager, who oversaw the dining room protocols and the silver cabinet. Mrs. Sarah looked at her with the specific patience of someone who had been managing difficult households for a very long time. "The silver knives are not kitchen tools," she said. "They are Valente bloodline." Tessa understood what that meant. It meant no one questioned them. It meant the washing procedure was a ceremony, not a sanitation check. It meant the film she had smelled would remain unnamed until something required it to be named. She was setting linens in the service corridor when she noticed a knife being returned to the cabinet with a faint residue near the blade. Not water, not polish. A film. Very thin, but present. She filed it and said nothing. After she said it, after the room had frozen around the words, "The poison is not in the food," Nico set the knife down and said 4 words, "Keep explaining. Don't stop." Laurent stepped forward. "She tasted everything I prepared. There is nothing wrong with the food." "The food is fine," Tessa agreed. She moved to the serving station and asked for 3 things. A portion of the fish that had not been touched by the silver knife. A portion of the same fish that had been cut with it. A small spoon from the regular kitchen set. Laurent watched her with the expression of a man waiting to be proven right about something. She tasted the uncut fish with the regular spoon. Clean. She tasted the sauce alone. Clean, acidic, citrus-forward. Correct. She touched the tip of the spoon to the fish that the silver knife had cut. Trace contact, the way hospital kitchens trained staff to identify contamination. She touched the spoon to her tongue, caught the bitterness, and spat into a linen napkin before rinsing her mouth. A metallic bitterness, very faint, not from the fish, not from the sauce. It appeared after the blade had contacted the food. "This taste," she said, "comes from the knife." "The knives are polished silver," Laurent said. "They have a taste. Every metallurgist in the world." "This is not a silver taste," Tessa said. She looked at Nico. "In the hospital kitchen, we had a rule. If only one patient gets sick, you check what only that patient touched." A pause. "You are the only person in this room who uses those knives." Nico looked at the set of silver on the table. He looked at his right hand. He had been aware, for weeks, of the tremor that arrived and departed without pattern. Dr. Conrad, the household physician, had told him it was stress. Victor had suggested it might be the beginning of something more serious. Both of them had offered this information in the same tone, concerned, measured, directed toward the same conclusion. He had not asked who had told them to worry about it. He had not asked why. They both seemed prepared with the same answer. He looked at Tessa. He said, "Lock the kitchen." The investigation of Laurent's quarters produced 3 things: a receipt for polishing solution, chemical grade, not the standard compound, a small unlabeled bottle in the drawer beside his bed, a printed list of menu changes over the previous 4 weeks, annotated in his handwriting, with a pattern of acid-heavy dishes circled in pencil. Laurent was furious. He said the bottle was a digestive compound he had ordered for personal use. He said he had been annotating the menu to study flavor progressions. He said someone had put those items in his room to destroy him. He was not entirely wrong. Tessa smelled the unlabeled bottle. The compound inside was similar to the smell near the washing station, but not identical. Similar enough to suggest the same category of substance. Different enough to suggest someone had wanted it found while leaving the actual mechanism somewhere else. Nico ordered Laurent held in the cold storage room. Tessa said, "He is arrogant. That is not the same as guilty." Nico looked at her. "In my house," he said, "arrogance often comes with blood on the hands." Then, check the hands that never enter the kitchen. Victor Marlowe was standing near the door with his document case. He had entered very quietly and at some point during the search. "There are financial documents that require your attention," he said to Nico. "Given your recent health concerns, the council feels it would be prudent." "What recent health concerns?" Tessa said. Everyone looked at her. "In the last 3 weeks," she said. "Which meals produced symptoms?" Nico was very still. "Headaches," he said after a moment. "Some difficulty with concentration. My hands have been." He stopped. "Shaking," Tessa said. He did not confirm it. He did not deny it. "Show me the menus," she said. Mrs. Sarah produced the dining record. Tessa went through it methodically. Saffron soup with cream. No symptoms reported. Braised lamb with herb reduction. No symptoms. Pan-seared fish with lemon butter. Headache the following morning. Roasted duck with cherry glaze. Some difficulty concentrating. Pasta with tomato and anchovy. Hand tremor noted in household log. She went through the record twice. The first time quickly, looking for anything obvious. The second time slowly, matching symptoms from the household log against dishes. The pattern was not random, it was specific. Every meal that produced symptoms contained something with a notable acid content. Lemon, tomato, cherry reduction, vinegar-dressed salads. None of the heavy, slow-cooked dishes had produced anything. "The coating activates with acid," Tessa said. Mrs. Sarah frowned. "What coating?" "Whatever is on the silver blades. When the knife contacts an acidic sauce, a small amount is released into the food, enough to accumulate over multiple exposures." She set the dining record down. Whoever did this did not choose the food. They chose the knife, and they chose the menu to match it. The compound was not designed to kill quickly. It was designed to irritate the nervous system in small, repeated exposures, creating symptoms that looked like decline rather than poisoning. She looked at Mrs. Sarah. Who controls the menu schedule? Chef Laurent prepares proposals, Mrs. Sarah said carefully. But the formal dining calendar, the one that ties into the estate protocols and asset records, is filed through the financial office. A pause. Mr. Marlowe's office. Tessa opened the dining record to the back pages. There was a supplementary calendar, printed on a different paper stock, with Nico's formal event schedule. Each event where acid-heavy dishes had been proposed corresponded with a meeting where Nico was expected to sign financial documents. Tessa looked at the document case Victor had set beside his chair. She looked at Victor. He was watching her with the expression of someone performing calm. "The financial documents," she said. "What do they transfer?" Victor smiled. "I don't think a member of the household staff. What do they transfer?" Nico said. Victor's smile did not change. Provisional management authority over the port contracts and reserve accounts. In the event that you are determined to be experiencing impairment that affects, who determines that? The medical assessment would be, based on what? Tessa said, based on symptoms that appeared only on the nights when you controlled the menu. Victor looked at her. "You are a maid," he said. "I am," Tessa said, "and I have no access to your money, your ports, or your signatures." She let that sit for a moment. "He does." Victor set his document case on the table. He proposed a solution. The 9-course dinner for the council meeting was still scheduled for that evening. Tessa would taste every course in front of the full council. If Nico showed no symptoms, it proved the issue was resolved. If he did, it proved he was genuinely impaired, and the financial transition was appropriate. And if he shows symptoms tonight, Tessa said, while using the same silver set? Victor spread his hands. Then the food is safe and the impairment is internal. That is the simplest explanation. Tessa looked at Nico. "I accept the terms," she said. With one modification, Victor waited, Valente protocol. Before the 4th course, the senior financial counsel demonstrates the safety of the table by using the host's silver to cut the ceremonial first portion. Victor's expression did not change, but something behind it did. That tradition applies only to formal Valente succession dinners. Tonight's dinner is a council meeting regarding the Valente succession of financial authority, Tessa said. "I believe it qualifies." Victor looked at Tessa. He looked at Nico. He looked at the 7 council members, each of whom was now watching him with the particular attention of people who have realized they are seeing something real. "The tradition is ceremonial," Victor said. "It has not been performed in 11 years. Mrs. Sarah confirmed the protocol this afternoon," Tessa said. "On whose authority did you?" "On the authority of someone who checked the household records, because no one else had thought to," Tessa said. Victor straightened the document case beside his chair. He looked at the knife. He could not refuse without suggesting he was afraid of the knife. He agreed. He believed the compromised knife would be placed in the correct service rotation position, where it always went, because that rotation was filed through his office and he had seen no changes to it. He did not know Tessa and Mrs. Sarah had already replaced it. Laurent was brought out of the cold storage room. He was still angry. Cold storage had not improved his mood. He stood with his arms crossed and his chef's jacket slightly rumpled. The first time Tessa had seen him look anything other than impeccable, and he looked at her the way he had looked at the saffron soup when it came out of the pot 5 degrees too warm, like a problem that should not have occurred and whose presence was someone else's fault. He was also, Tessa could tell, frightened in the way of someone who had begun to understand they were being used. He had managed the Valente kitchen for 15 years. He had built a reputation on precision and loyalty and the particular pride of someone who had never once served a dish he was not certain of. And now he was standing in a corridor outside his own domain, because a receipt in his drawer and a bottle on his nightstand had made him look like someone capable of poisoning the man he had cooked for, since that man was 19 years old. She could see him working through what that meant. She gave him a moment to finish working through it before she spoke. "The menu for tonight," she said. "Can you adjust the acid concentration in the 4th-course sauce?" He looked at her. "Why?" "I need the reaction to be visible enough to read, not enough to cause lasting harm, and I need a physician present." Laurent was quiet. "You are asking me to set a trap using my kitchen. I am asking you to stop someone from using your kitchen to destroy a man who trusted you for 15 years." A pause. "He barely trusted me," Laurent said. "He questioned my budgets twice a year. That is not the same as doubting your loyalty." He looked at the ceiling. "You are a kitchen aide from a hospital," he said. "You have no formal training in haute cuisine, no certification, no credential that entitles you to an opinion about my methods." "That is true," Tessa said. "You are also the only person in this building who identified the actual problem." Laurent was quiet for a moment. "You want me to cooperate with someone who I know is right and who I also do not particularly like." "Yes," Tessa said. "Why should I?" "Because you are innocent," she said. "Not because you are kind." He looked at her. "After a moment, the 4th-course sauce can be adjusted. There is a reduction I have been testing that would produce the correct acid environment." "Good. And I want my name restored in this kitchen before the dinner ends." "If it works," Tessa said, "your name will restore itself." He thought about that. "And the knives. You will certify which ones have been handled by the polishing company that billed through the Marlowe Financial Office. 3 of them. 4th position in the service rotation." Laurent looked at her. "You have already checked the rotation." "Mrs. Sarah checked it with me," Tessa said. "She was very thorough once she understood what we were looking for." The 9-course dinner began at 8. The underground dining room was prepared with the full Valente protocol. Crystal on the table, 3 settings of silverware per place, 2 decanters of the estate red, candles at the correct height to illuminate faces without creating shadow. Mrs. Sarah had overseen every arrangement with the precision of someone who understood that the difference between a dinner and a ceremony was the intention of the people attending. Tonight, the intention was complicated. Victor intended to watch Nico show symptoms before the council and use those symptoms to activate the transfer documents before anyone understood what was happening. Laurent intended to cook the finest 9 courses he had produced in 3 years, because his name was on the menu and his reputation was on the table, and he was not willing to let either be taken from him. Tessa intended to reverse the evening. Nico sat at the head of the table. Victor sat to his right. 7 council members filled the chairs between them and the far end. Mrs. Sarah managed the service. Laurent directed the kitchen. Tessa stood at the serving station. She tasted every course. Clean, clean. Victor watched her after the third course with the particular attention of someone who had begun to wonder whether their plan was intact. It was, just not the plan he thought he was watching. At the fourth course, Tessa stepped forward. "Valente protocol," she said. "Before the main course, the senior financial counsel demonstrates the safety of the table for the council." She set the silver knife, fourth position in the service rotation, beside Victor's plate. He picked it up. He looked at her. He looked at the sauce. He cut the ceremonial first portion. The council watched. "Eat," Tessa said. He ate. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Victor smiled. Satisfied? His right hand moved to set down his glass. He had been watching Tessa the whole time, cataloging her movements, looking for the moment when her plan would become visible, calculating whether he could interrupt it before it arrived at its conclusion. He had not been watching his own hand. It trembled, very slightly, enough. The glass touched the table with a sound that was slightly wrong. Not the clean contact of a controlled placement, but the rattle of something set down quickly before it could be dropped. One of the council members looked at Victor's hand, then looked at Nico's hands, then looked back at Victor's. "Enough," Tessa said. "That is how it started with him." The table was very quiet. Victor pressed his fingers flat against the tablecloth. "This is a reaction to wine," he said. "You have not had any wine," Mrs. Sarah said from the side of the room. Tessa picked up the knife Victor had used and set it beside the 2 others she had flagged with Laurent. 3 knives, fourth position in the rotation. She set a regular kitchen knife beside them. She explained without jargon, without formulas. She placed 3 portions of the evening sauce on small service plates. She placed the 3 flagged knives beside one plate, a regular kitchen knife beside the second, nothing beside the third. She ran each knife through its corresponding sauce. She lifted a small tasting spoon and worked through the results in order. The untouched sauce, clean. The sauce touched by the regular knife, clean. The sauce touched by the flagged silver, a metallic bitterness, very faint, but present. The council members closest to her leaned slightly forward. She set down the spoon. Acid-neutral sauce produces no reaction from any knife. Acid sauce with a standard knife produces no reaction. Acid sauce with the knives that were polished through the Marlowe office account produces this. She did not describe the chemistry. She described the result. Accumulated over multiple exposures, she said, it produces neurological symptoms, tremor, headache, difficulty concentrating, the kind of symptoms that, if documented by a physician over several weeks, might support a finding of impairment. She set down the last knife. Chef Laurent did not know which knives were compromised. He has no access to the polishing contracts that run through the financial office. She looked at Victor. He did not fear the food. He feared the wrong knife touching the right sauce. She looked at the council. The person who adjusted the polishing schedule matched the acid dishes to Nico's signing calendar and filed the preliminary medical documentation. She stopped. Victor was looking at his hand. He was performing steadiness. He was not achieving it. Nico stood. His own hands were not entirely steady either. He was aware of this. 6 weeks of accumulated exposure to a compound that had been designed to make him look like a man in decline. And there were moments, this was one of them, when he felt the distance between the version of himself that others needed to see and the version currently inhabiting his body. But he was standing. He had chosen to stand before he rose from the chair. The choice came first. The standing followed it. "You did not poison my dinner," he said. Victor said nothing. "You poisoned the only thing on this table that no one was allowed to question." One of the council members said very quietly, "The silver." "His privilege," Tessa said. The room was silent for several seconds. Victor said, "You have a maid's testimony and a kitchen aid's theory." "I have 3 knives," Nico said. "I have a polishing contract signed through your office. I have a medical file built on reports you submitted, not examinations anyone conducted independently. I have a financial transfer document that activates when I am declared impaired." He looked at Victor. "And I have a maid who told me not to eat my dinner when everyone else in this room thought she was the problem." Victor said nothing more. Before he was removed, he said, "You think I was the only one who wanted your hand weak enough to guide?" Nico did not answer him. He already knew there was more work to do, but he also knew, now, where to start. The investigation in the days that followed was not simple. Victor had been managing the Valente financial structure for 10 years. 10 years of access meant 10 years of accumulated leverage over accounts, over suppliers, over staff who had taken payments and had no clean way to account for them. Some of what he had built would take months to dismantle. Some of it was designed to survive him. Nico understood this. He did not pretend otherwise. The investigation in the days that followed produced a capo from the Eastern Warehouse Network, who had provided Victor access to the silver cabinet in exchange for a promised share of the Port Authority transition. Dr. Conrad, the physician who had filed the impairment documentation, was removed from the household. His medical notes were found to rely almost entirely on symptom descriptions provided by Victor, with no independent clinical assessment. Laurent was formally cleared. He did not thank Tessa, but he stopped ignoring her, which in his particular language was something close to the same thing. When she was reassigned to the kitchen as the new head of food safety protocol, he said, "You will check the sauces before service." She said, "And the knives." He said, "And the knives." That was enough. 2 weeks later, Nico called Tessa to the private dining room. The silver set was on the table, cleaned and placed in a sealed case. He said, "I owe you my life," she said. "You owe me a kitchen where no one laughs when a servant smells danger." He took out a small key. It was old brass, the kind cut for a single specific lock. It opened the private tool cabinet where the Valente silverware, tasting instruments, and service records were kept under his personal seal. "Anything I eat, drink, sign beside, or cut with passes through you first," he said. She looked at the key. "Even the silver? Especially the silver." She did not take it immediately. She looked at it. She thought about the beginning of the evening, the uniform that didn't fit, the guard's quiet remark, Chef Laurent's particular way of not looking at her. She thought about being handed a fork and told to determine whether something was worth dying for. "Then no one in this house uses my body as a test shield again." He nodded. He said it in front of the staff assembled at the entrance. No one tastes for me because they are disposable. They taste because they are trained, protected, and heard. She took the key. She was quiet for a moment. Nico said, "You were the only one in that room who looked at me like I was still worth saving, not worth replacing." Tessa looked at him. "I looked at the knife," she said. "You were just the one holding it." He did not answer. She did not stay for an answer. She did not make it a ceremony. She simply put it in her pocket and went back to work. Later, Nico came down to the underground kitchen. She was running a pre-service check, dipping a tasting spoon into the evening reduction, examining the silver set under the kitchen lamp, running her thumb along the edge of each knife in the approved set. He watched her work. He said, "What did the table miss?" She set down the last knife. She looked at the cabinet where the polished set had once sat in its unlocked case, too sacred to question. "Everything it was too proud to question," she said. The Viper boss had searched every bottle, every plate, and every cook in his underground kitchen. But the poison had never been in the food. It had been waiting on the one thing power believed no servant had the right to touch. Was Nico right to trust the maid who questioned the knife? Or was the real mistake trusting any tradition no one was allowed to touch? Share your answer below and subscribe to Mafia Hearts and Secrets for more dangerous romances hidden inside the underworld's most powerful families.